Hey everyone, and welcome back to Joey's Retro Handhelds. I'm Joey, and today we're going to be doing a quick review of the MagicX XU Mini M. I say quick review because I just can't recommend this from a hardware or software perspective at the moment. Software will likely get better as more and more people get this in their hands and custom firmware gets developed for it and all of that sort of thing. But even the hardware side of things just isn't great for me. So going to be a very quick review. So let me just give you a quick rundown of what's good, what's bad, and just what to expect with the XU Mini M. First up, I bought mine from Ampone off AliExpress for $50 and they also included a case with the order. I'm going to say it right off the bat that $50 is a bit too much for this in my mind, especially with how many devices are in the $40 price range nowadays. And I think this will likely end up somewhere in the $30 to $40 price range when all is said and done. And I still think that that's more expensive than this is worth. There is no Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth, no HDMI, or anything like that. It is very bare bones. The first thing that I noticed was the plastic. This is now twice in the last month where I've noticed the plastic on a device, and I don't think I ever have in the last year and a half. This really does feel cheap, from the shell to the D-pad and the buttons molding to the assembly and what looks like the headphone jack causing the shell to not close all the way properly or anything like that on the bottom. Honestly, I just can't recall another device that feels as cheap as this does. It is very brittle plastic and nothing at all about this screams even $50 to me. This sort of feels 3D printed in a way that I just went downstairs to my Bamboo A1 printer and printed everything out and then put it together. That is exactly what this feels like. Not the professional 3D printing way, but I did this at home and then sent it out to everybody sort of way. My first experience turning it on wasn't great. It would turn on, the light would turn green, but no picture would show. This actually ended up being my experience every single day. I almost scrapped this entire review because it just wouldn't turn on. And when it did turn on, it wasn't great. So I initially had to push the reset button after turning it on to get it to actually work and turn on. And then that stopped working as well. Turns out the SD card just straight up died after a day. I reflashed the operating system on a brand new branded SD card, and it was fine afterwards. I know content creators like myself like to talk about replacing SD cards with branded SD cards because of this exact same reason, but I have yet to discover any device where it died in a day. That's new for me. It also takes a decent amount of time to just turn on, and that's kind of important because there is no sleep mode. The power button just turns off the screen. It doesn't put it into a sleep mode. That alone is a massive hindrance in making this any sort of a useful micro device. Now, once you actually do get it working, the screen is one of the standouts here. It is really nice and it's bright, especially in this price range. It is 2.8 inches, 640 by 480, and games look really nice on it for the size. It also gets exceptionally bright, like mini LED types of brightness, so it's really good on that front for outside gaming if you want to do that. Navigating around the software, and it is bare bones. None of this is surprising. I had a MagicX XU and this might actually be more limited than that was. There is really nothing you can do here. The main screen is just scrolling through all of the systems. Inside of each is the game list. Hitting the G button for options on the main screen gives you exactly 3 options, one of which is just how you turn off the device. Hitting that same button in the system list gives you more options, but nothing really crazy here. This feels like one of those $10 AliExpress Famiclones that somehow made its way to $50, at least on the software end. And that's what I kept thinking every time I used this device. It made me wonder why I even bothered reviewing this. Hitting the G button in-game gets you a very short, quick menu, with no way that I found to actually access RetroArch to make any changes. It is very, very bare bones. This is a bit of a cop-out, but in one way this would be good for a kid or a child because there's just nothing they could actually break. You can really do anything on this and not destroy anything, so that is a good thing. But it's a cop-out because I absolutely hate when people say that. That just means that the device and the software isn't good, and we're trying to make excuses for it by saying that it'd be good for a kid because it's limited. That doesn't make sense to me. Jumping into games and playing, and the experience felt good. The D-pad feels fine, so do the buttons, but you can feel the entire shell just creak if you push a little too hard, and it feels like it's going to break. The device tends to get very warm to hot, and you feel it on your thumbs as you push the Y button or D-pad right, as it's the screen part that's getting hot, as well as the back of it. Now, these sticks are kind of the standout here, as they're finally not actual Switch sticks and more closely resemble the sticks used in the Retroid Pocket 2S or the Odin 2. But it's like the Make-A-Wish version of those. Still better than Switch sticks, though. The fascinating part about all of this to me is that it just doesn't have the power to really use any system that makes use of these sticks. For Nintendo 64, it's like most devices in this power and price range, where you have to play the Nintendo 64 Core Shuffle, trying them all for each game just to see what works best and doesn't have broken textures or colors and all of that. I tried that for Super Mario 64 and I couldn't find a single one that just didn't. But after ignoring all of that to test the sticks, I can say that the sticks themselves actually feel pretty good, if you can find any sort of game that will use them. Now, you've heard me say this before and I'm going to say it again, but you would treat this as a PS1 and under device. All of those sort of systems would work well on here and just kind of ignore Nintendo 64 and Dreamcast and PSP. Unless you want to tinker, in which case, have fun, but I wouldn't recommend it to most people. Battery life on this is just fine. It's around 6 or so hours, maybe a little bit less. Nothing crazy for a non-Wi-Fi device, but the heat will have you putting it down way before the 6 hours anyways. Lastly, the speakers on this is quite bad, and there's massive distortion. These might actually be the worst speakers that I can think of in this price range, or even any other, that I've heard. So have a listen. So let's wrap all of this up. There are 3 things that I like about this device: the sticks, the design, and the screen. The problem is everything else. While the design is great, I wish it was made by another company with better parts and all of that sort of thing. I would love to see this exact same design made by somebody who knows how to make handhelds. For $50 US, this is not worth $50 US. This is more in line with a $25 to $30 US price range, and that is exactly how I see this. This is a Famiclone that somehow got a little bit more marketing pressure or advertisements than usual, and suddenly people are actually reviewing it. When I look at other devices in this price range that are similar to this, I don't see it beating them in any way, shape, or form, hardware and software-wise. For me, I think right now the MIUI A30 is the best that you can get as a micro. The RG28XX, despite the small buttons, is still a really good choice, better than this. TrimUI Smart, not many will agree with me on this one, but I still find it to be better than this, and that even has Wi-Fi, and it's only like $30. I just don't see where this fits into the current landscape, as is, at launch, right now, with the hardware and software being as it is. We'll see how this improves over time. I'm sure somebody in the community has taken it up on themselves to fix this device, as we usually do, and hopefully they do for the people that like this, but I just don't see anything here to recommend to anybody else, and maybe in 6 months or so there will be, but right now I would consider this a pass for most people, unless you're a collector, in which case, collect if you want. That's going to be it for this one. Don't forget to like and sub to help the channel grow. Come join me on the Discord to talk all about these retro handhelds. Support me on Patreon if you like my stuff. And hope you all have a good one.